In the ancient kingdom of 𝐬𝐽, where the Niger River bends like a serpent and the royal drums beat stories into the wind, there once lived a queen who defied every law written in stone and blood. Her name was Queen 𝐬𝐽. She was not born into royalty, but fate, like a cunning deity, chose her. She was the daughter of a blacksmith from Ida, bold, with eyes like wet charcoal and a laugh that made even the elders smile. When the old king, 𝐜𝐡𝐚𝐬𝐫𝐢, saw her dancing at the Yam festival, he declared, "She will be mine." That same night, he sent emissaries with ivory, salt, and red cloth. 𝐬𝐽's father, poor but wise, wept in secret. He knew a blacksmith's daughter could never say no to a king. By 18, she wore the beaded crown and sat on the golden stool beside the 𝐴TA. But her heart, her true heart, was not in the palace. It was hidden with another. 𝐬𝐵𝐁e was unlike any other man in 𝐬𝐽. He was tall, with skin the color of midnight and arms that carried scars like medals. He was born to a dibia, a spiritual healer, and trained as a warrior before he could speak in full sentences. When he entered battle, he moved like a storm. But it wasn't his strength that caught 𝐬𝐽's attention. It was his silence. He spoke little, watched much, and when he looked at her during a royal procession, it was not as a servant looked upon a queen. It was as a man sees the woman he once knew in a dream. Their first words were exchanged by the Niger River, where 𝐬𝐽 snuck away with a calabash to fetch water, claiming she missed the scent of the riverbank. 𝐬𝐵𝐁e stood nearby, guarding. He did not bow. She did not command. They merely stared. "You don't fear me," she said. "I don't fear anything that bleeds," he answered. That was the beginning. They met often, always in shadows, behind the market stalls at dusk, under the palm groves before dawn. She wore common wrappers. He brought her cola nuts and whispered poems from old 𝐬𝐽 war chants. It was a dangerous game. The palace was a fortress. The queen's movements were watched by eunuchs and maids, and the 𝐴TA's jealousy was infamous. One man, a drummer, had once smiled too long in her presence and had his hands cut off. Yet love is its own god, stubborn, reckless, and blind to consequence. Soon tongues began to wag. Her laughter grew louder after visiting the temple guards. Her skin glowed as if oiled by joy. The king's advisors warned him, "Your wife's heart is not yours alone." The 𝐴TA laughed at first, then he summoned a spy. One rainy night, as the palace slept under the lull of talking frogs and distant thunder, 𝐬𝐽 slipped out through the secret corridor that led past the shrine of 𝐬𝐽. She wore a blue wrapper, tied tightly, her hair wrapped in indigo cloth. 𝐬𝐵𝐁e waited under the silk cotton tree, his horse ready. He had braided a leather rope into a ring and carved her name into a gourd. But the spy followed. By dawn, the lovers had fled across the river into the thick forests of 𝐴TUCPA. The spy returned soaked, breathless, and trembling. The 𝐴TA did not roar. He did not smash his staff. He merely said, "Send for the 𝐴TUCPA. Burn the drums. We go to war." For months, the kingdom of 𝐬𝐽 was divided. To some, Queen 𝐬𝐽 was a traitor, an ungrateful girl who spat on the crown and humiliated the throne. Elders shouted in the council house, "If she disrespected her husband, what hope do our daughters have?" Others whispered a different story. She followed her heart. Is a woman not flesh and blood? Are queens not allowed to love? Young girls wore wrappers like hers, singing secret songs. 𝐬𝐽 ran to love, 𝐬𝐵𝐁e rode like thunder. The queen is gone, but her fire lingers. Meanwhile, in the forest lands, 𝐬𝐽 and 𝐬𝐵𝐁e built a home of palm wood and love. She cooked yam porridge on firewood. He hunted antelope. They lived like spirits in exile, happy but hunted. One day, a messenger boy stumbled upon them while gathering herbs. Recognizing them, he fled back to Ida. The 𝐴TA was waiting. Obain was captured in his sleep. The 𝐴TA's guards descended like bats at midnight. Spears clashed, branches cracked, and 𝐬𝐿maja's screams echoed across the hills. Obain killed 3, but they bound him with charms soaked in crocodile bile. 𝐬𝐿maja ran toward him, only to be seized. They were dragged back to Ida, shackled, bruised, but unbowed. Crowds gathered like vultures, women wailed, children clung to their mothers. In the palace courtyard, the 𝐴TA stood beneath the lion-headed umbrella. He did not look at 𝐬𝐿maja, not at first. Then he spoke. "You were my queen," he said. "You wore my crown, slept in my bed, and yet you chose a man of dust over a throne of gold." 𝐬𝐿maja raised her chin. "I chose freedom. I chose love. A golden cage is still a cage." The 𝐴TA trembled, not from anger, from pain, for he had loved her. He turned to Obain. "You will face 𝐬𝐿𝐫𝐞, the trial of double iron. If you live, you go free. If you die, so be it." Obain nodded once. The trial of 𝐬𝐿𝐫𝐞 was brutal. 2 molten rods pulled from sacred fires placed on either hand. If the skin healed clean after 7 days, the accused was innocent. If it blistered or rotted, guilt was proven by the gods. Obain accepted the rods with silent pride. As he screamed in agony, 𝐬𝐿maja knelt, praying not to the palace gods, but to the spirits of the forest that had once sheltered them. 7 days passed. The healer peeled the leaves from Obain's hands, burned, black, blistered. The verdict was clear. But before the 𝐴TA could speak, something happened. 𝐬𝐿maja, once a girl of dance and smiles, stood tall as an 𝐸𝐿K&x tree. Her voice thundered. "Let the kingdom know. You burn him not because he is guilty, but because he loved. You chained me not because I sinned, but because I lived. If you kill him, 𝐴TA, may your crown weep blood. May every daughter you birth fall in love with her enemy. May love haunt this kingdom until truth is no longer feared." She tore off her coral beads and threw them at his feet. Then, before anyone could stop her, she pulled a dagger from Obain's belt and drove it into her chest. Obain, still bleeding, screamed her name. She died with her eyes wide open. Obain was allowed to bury her by the river. The 𝐴TA, broken, grew thin and sickly. His advisors begged him to remarry. He refused. He wore white for a year and banned festivals. Some say he would sit by the river at night, whispering her name. Obain vanished shortly after. Some say he walked into the forest and became a spirit. Others believe he wandered to a distant land, where he taught his children to never bow to love's enemies. But 𝐬𝐿maja became a legend. Her story, banned in official palace scrolls, lived in songs and market gossip. Girls painted her name in charcoal behind their huts. Women invoked her when love hurt. And every time a queen laughed too freely or danced too wildly, elders warned, "Remember 𝐬𝐿maja." But others smiled, because love, wild, forbidden, and true, had once shaken the mighty kingdom of 𝐸𝐿𝐫. Years passed, but the ghost of Queen 𝐬𝐿maja refused to rest. Every full moon, young women in Ida claimed to see a woman dressed in blue, dancing by the riverbank, singing in a voice soft as wind and sharp as thunder. "Obain," she called, "my king of no crown." The 𝐴TA aged like a tree struck by lightning, standing, but hollow inside. His people whispered behind his back. The crown had lost its shine. The court jester once remarked that the king's heart had been buried by the river, wrapped in blue cloth. The royal council urged the 𝐻𝐻 to cleanse the land, to marry again, and silence the curse. But no woman dared step into the palace walls, let alone wear 𝐬𝐻𝐫𝐷𝐿 beads, until one did. Princess 𝐬𝐻𝐾 of Appa was bold, stubborn, and curious traits often scolded in girls, but praised in kings. She arrived with her own entourage, her own guards, and her own gods. The 𝐴TA, desperate to restore his house, agreed to marry her, thinking she would be easily molded. But 𝐬𝐻𝐾 was not moldable. She read every scroll about 𝐬𝐻𝐫, listened to every market tale, and visited the place by the river where 𝐬𝐻𝐫 was buried. When the palace priest warned her not to speak the former queen's name, she laughed. She was a woman, 𝐻𝐻𝐾 said, not a ghost, and she bled for love. That deserves a statue, not silence. Within months, the palace began to change. She reinstated festivals. Women were allowed to speak in the royal square again. She restored the yam feast that had been banned after 𝐬𝐻𝐫𝐻's betrayal, and slowly the people began to smile again. But at night, 𝐻𝐻𝐾 would stand by the window of her chamber, staring at the stars, wondering, what truly happened to Obann? Obann had not died. He had fled east, across the hills and rivers, settling among the Anioma people. There, he took a new name, 𝐬𝐵. He became a farmer, planted yams, told stories to children, and kept the past buried like old bones. But legends have long legs. A traveling bard from Ida visited his village and sang of Queen 𝐬𝐻𝐫, the queen who defied the throne, and the warrior who vanished with her. Obann listened, silent, tears trailing his scarred hands. His heart had not healed, and though his body was old, his spirit burned like firewood, soaked in palm oil. One night he picked up his spear, kissed the earth, and began the long journey back to Ida. When news reached the palace that an old warrior claiming to be Obann had returned, the entire court went into frenzy. The guards wanted him arrested. The elders wanted him exiled. But Princess 𝐻𝐾 demanded to see him. They met in the courtyard, he gray and dusty, she regal and burning with curiosity. "You loved a queen and broke a kingdom," she said. "I loved a woman and followed her soul," Obann replied. 𝐻𝐾 paused. The land still remembers, and so do I. She offered him a seat at the royal compound as a guest. The 𝐴TA, now nearly blind and filled with shadows, refused to see Obann. But his body betrayed him. The day he heard Obann's voice carried in the courtyard, the old king collapsed. By dawn, 𝐴TA Agabaidu joined his ancestors, and the kingdom held its breath. The 𝐽𝐺ala tradition dictated that only a male heir could inherit the crown, but the 𝐴TA had no surviving sons, only a daughter from a servant who had long fled the court. The elders called for a fire council, an emergency gathering of chiefs, priests, and the 𝐸𝐶𝐾𝐵 warrior class. At its center stood Princess 𝐻𝐾, demanding reform. "The bloodline is tainted," said Chief Oloche. "The queen's curse must be broken with iron." "Then crown the rightful heart," said 𝐻𝐾, "not the strongest hand." For 3 days drums beat, fires burned, oracles spoke, and on the 4th day, Obann, the exile, stepped forward. "I do not seek the crown," he said, "but the woman I loved cursed this land because she was silenced. Let no woman be silenced again. Crown the one who speaks truth." Princess 𝐻𝐾 was crowned the first ruling 𝐴TA 𝐽𝐺ALA in recorded history, and the people cheered, not because she was royal, but because she was right. One of her first decrees as 𝐴TA was to erect a temple in 𝐬𝐻𝐫𝐻's name, beside the river where she had died. The temple was not large, but it was filled with carvings, bronze figures of a woman dancing with flames around her feet and a man holding a calabash full of stars. Every year, on the anniversary of 𝐬𝐻𝐫𝐠's death, women gathered there to sing the forbidden songs, now embraced by the land. She wore no chains. She bowed to no name. The queen who fled still sets hearts aflame. 𝐸𝐵𝐻, old and weary, was named guardian of the temple. He lived beside it, his days spent in peace, his nights filled with her memory. And one morning, when the mist was thick and the air still, the temple priest found him lying beside her grave, smiling. He had joined her. In time, the tale of 𝐸𝐻𝐫 and 𝐸𝐵𝐻 was no longer a scandal. It was history, a love story, a rebellion, a prophecy fulfilled. Young lovers swore by their names. Elders told their tale as warning and as inspiration. And the crown, once soaked in silence, now carried the flame of truth, passed down through queens, warriors, and dreamers. For in the heart of the kingdom of 𝐬𝐵𝐺𝐵, beneath the soil and river, lived a truth too strong to bury. Love, when true, cannot be tamed, not by kings, not by crowns, not by fear.